3rd of January 1961. National Reactor Testing Station, Idaho, 21:01 Mountain Standard Time. In the SL-1 control room, clipboard pages list routine restart tasks after the holiday outage. Outside, security logs show normal fence line patrols. Health physics instruments read background. At 21:05, alarms trip. Survey teams respond, rate meters in hand. Within minutes, they are mapping the SL-1 operating floor. Hundreds of Roentgens per hour. Localized peaks reported near 500 Roentgens per hour. Entry budgets collapse to seconds. 3 operators are inside. None respond to hails. A rapid manual lift of the central control rod drove the small boiling water test reactor prompt, critical, a millisecond power excursion, steam water hammer, violent mechanical ejection inside the vessel head region. They did not yet know that one number, 20 inches, would redefine low-power reactor controls across every comparable program in the United States. 1957. Test Area North, National Reactor Testing Station, Idaho. On a drafting table, AEC site maps and historic American engineering record plates spread edge to edge. A finger traces the access road to a small reactor designated SL-1. The stationary low-power reactor program belonged to the United States Army, conceived to deliver few megawatt thermal output for remote military stations, simple, compact, quickly started. Design practiced concentrated reactivity worth in a single central control rod, so the core could be made critical with peripheral rods still inserted. The simplification reduced startup time and operational complexity. It also concentrated hazard if that rod moved too far, too fast. Oversight rested with the Atomic Energy Commission Idaho Operations Office. Contractors, General Electric for operations, Combustion Engineering for technical support and hot shop analysis, staffed the facility and managed day-to-day work. The reactor itself was a small boiling water design, rated 3 megawatts thermal under normal conditions. Shield plugs sealed the vessel head. Manual rod drives carried inch markings, each increment representing a measured reactivity step. Health physics relied on portable ion chambers and film badges, standard tools of the era. The historic American engineering record catalogues TAN within the larger Idaho National Engineering and Environmental Laboratory footprint. Department of Energy Freedom of Information Act reading rooms hold the SL-1 Administrative and Technical Series, IDO 19300, IDO 19301, IDO 19302, IDO 19311, IDO 19313. The final report of the SL-1 recovery operation, IDO 19311, chronicles moving the pressure vessel, dissecting components, cutting up and burying the reactor building. A design intended for field operability created a single-point control rod dependency with high insertion worth. Maintenance notes before the holidays recorded rod motion issues, benign line items that become decisive. Wandsworth curves are quantified later. 3rd of January, 1961 afternoon. Stationary low-power reactor number 1, Test Area North. A clipboard carries the shift order. 3 names typed cleanly. Chief Electrician's Mate First Class. Richard C. Legg, Supervisor. Specialist. 5 John A. Burns, Operator. Specialist 4 Richard L. McKinley, Trainee. The Army owned the reactor. The Atomic Energy Commission provided oversight. General Electric managed technical operations. Restart preparation followed a holiday outage. Procedures assumed controlled inch-by-inch rod adjustments under written guidance. The actual sequence would be reconstructed months later from physical evidence and position indicators. A rapid lift of the central control rod to approximately 20 inches produced prompt supercriticality. Reactivity insertion faster than void or temperature feedbacks could shut the reaction down. Rodworth characterization completed after the event showed the central rod alone could take the core from subcritical to critical with outer rods still inserted. Operationally convenient. Narrow margins. Document IDO 19302, dated 31st October 1962, describes the event and the administrative response. The report's opening statement is explicit. It does not attempt to determine the cause. Staffing, procedure windows, and hardware combined to allow a single motion to exceed safe insertion limits. Investigators would recover rod position indicators and vessel internals to back-calculate inches withdrawn. That number, 20 inches, becomes the hinge of the entire case. The reconstruction fixes a motion sufficient for prompt criticality with peripheral control elements still in place. 3rd of January, 1961. National Reactor Testing Station perimeter and test area north access. 21:10 to 23:59 Mountain Standard Time. A security gate log carries timestamps in ink. A health physicist snaps a pencil dosimeter, checks the scale. Routine safeguards anticipated background readings at the fence line. After the excursion, field teams mapped conditions inside. Survey reports logged hundreds of Röntgens per hour on the operating floor. The building was zoned, entries controlled by rate meters and survey maps. A control point was established. Self-contained breathing apparatus, anti-contamination suits. Entrance rotated, dose tracked in Röntgens per hour, the legacy unit of the period. Conversion notes appeared on clipboards. Approximately 1 Röntgen gamma equals 0.0096 sieverts. Entries were limited to seconds in the highest fields. Film badges logged accumulated exposure. Respiratory protection and frisking protocols governed every exit. Document IDO 19302 catalogues, entry controls, removal attempts, and radiological conditions. It is a summary of activities following the incident, not a causal analysis. Survey-driven logistics dictated short, staggered entries. The approach delayed recovery but limited responder dose. 2 victims were recoverable within the first day through coordinated timed operations. The 3rd casualty was pinned above the vessel head, a mechanical reality documented in recovery logs. That entrapment would define operations for the next week, requiring custom rigging and extended planning under strict radiological controls. 3rd of January, 1961, 21:01 Mountain Standard Time. SL-1 operating floor and vessel head zone. Analyses extended through 1962. In a laboratory months later, analysts overlay Rodworth curves on a core map. A vertical line marks 20 inches. Startup procedures anticipated small, slow rod movements, incremental adjustments with pauses to verify subcritical margins at each step. Post-event modeling and physical evidence indicated something different, a rapid lift of the central rod to approximately 20 inches, enough to create a prompt critical state. Small boiling water reactor kinetics depend on negative reactivity feedback from void formation and rising coolant temperature. Those feedbacks act over time constants measured in fractions of a second. The reconstructed insertion rate outpaced them. The result, a power burst, few times 10 to the 18th. Fissions estimated in technical literature, and General Electric analyses referenced in Department of Energy holdings. Energy deposition occurred in milliseconds. Steam formed, water hammered, shield plugs ejected upward with enough force to explain the sealing damage and casualty positions documented in recovery photographs. NASA's safety message, published 2007, summarizes the mechanism. Rapid retraction of the central control rod to 20 inches resulted in a condition known as a prompt criticality. Single rod worth combined with rapid manual motion overcame operational margins. Mechanical violence caused immediate fatalities. Analysts would later correlate activation products, copper 64, gold 198, on tools and clothing to neutron flux distribution at the instant of the burst, reconstructing where each man stood. 3rd to 4th of January, 1961. SL-1 building. A stopwatch hangs from a survey lead's neck. Each entry is timed. Maintenance manuals budgeted minutes for normal work inside the reactor building. Emergency conditions cut allowable presence to tens of seconds in localized hotspots. 2 bodies were removed in successive controlled entries during the first 24 hours. The 3rd required custom rigging, completed 9th of January. Temporary shielding was positioned. Tongs, stretchers, and decontamination stations were staged. Continuous frisking at exit points. Contamination control protocols governed every movement. Dose logging was immediate, recorded on clipboards at the control point. Document IDO 19302 details the sequence of entries and the constraints imposed by dose rate maps. Each step was planned, briefed, and executed under strict time limits. The casualty pinned above the vessel delayed investigation. Rigging specialists designed a lifting assembly that could be operated remotely or with minimal direct handling. Health physics teams rehearsed the procedure outside the building, timing each motion. When the operation proceeded, entry duration was measured in seconds. The recovery succeeded without additional exposure beyond planned limits. Field teams flagged hot particle finds along access routes. Small fragments of activated or contaminated material tracked from the operating floor. Evidence was logged, samples collected, and perimeter monitoring adjusted. Those particle finds shaped radiological surveys over the following days, extending the monitoring grid and tightening control point procedures. The data became part of the technical appendices, documenting not only the immediate response, but the attention to detail that prevented secondary contamination from spreading beyond controlled boundaries. May 1961 to July 1962. National Reactor Testing Station, Hot Shop, Idaho. The pressure vessel rests on blocking under a bridge crane. Cameras record every lift, every cut. Some Atomic Energy Commission observers hoped for intact internal geometries, components in place, minimal disruption. Hot shop examination documented something else. Core disassembly signatures, deformed components, indicators consistent with steam water hammer following a prompt power burst. Remote saws cut through steel. Shield windows, thick leaded glass, allowed observation from protected stations. Fuel elements were sampled. Metallography examined fracture surfaces and deformation patterns. Rod drives were inspected, position indicators analyzed to infer the last motion before the excursion. Every finding was photographed, catalogued, entered into the technical record. Document IDO 19311, dated July 1962, describes the work. This work consisted of moving the pressure vessel and core to the hot shop, dissecting and analyzing the reactor and its components, cutting up and burying the reactor building. The effort spanned more than a year. Hot shop data anchored the Rodworth reconstruction. Evidence excluded alternative mechanisms, chemical explosion for instance, or mechanical failure unrelated to reactivity insertion. Debris told the story. Shield plugs had been ejected upward with measurable force. Vessel internals showed impact and deformation consistent with rapid pressure rise. Core geometry was disrupted. Fuel element positions matched the expected distribution from a short-duration power burst, concentrated in the central region. Each piece of physical evidence fed into kinetics models. The reconstruction converged: rapid central rod withdrawal, prompt criticality, mechanical disassembly in milliseconds. A meteorology memo and mapping of contamination would later test how far material actually travelled beyond the building. 3rd to 10th of January 1961. SL-1 control point, Idaho Falls. Film badges rest in trays, each labelled with a responder's name. Health physics technicians log milliroentgens and roentgens. Conversions to sieverts are posted on a chalkboard, handwritten in chalk. 1 Roentgen gamma approximately equals 0.0096 sieverts. Emergency doctrine accepted higher short-term dose limits to save life and secure the facility. Responders accrued measurable but controlled exposures. The highest steady radiation fields remained inside the SL-1 building. Activation analysis provided additional data. Copper-64 and gold-198 induced in personal items and tissues validated a neutron excursion and supported positional reconstructions. Those isotopes form when stable copper and gold absorb neutrons during a burst. Their presence and distribution confirmed that neutron flux had been intense and brief, consistent with prompt criticality, not a sustained or moderated reaction. The analysis appears in technical appendices referenced across Department of Energy holdings and IDO series documents. Document summaries enumerate dose management procedures and badge accounting. The reports remain administrative in tone, avoiding cause attribution. That restraint reflects the division of labor. Administrative reports summarized operations and safety posture. Technical annexes addressed mechanism. Rigorous dose control slowed operations. Each entry was planned against dose rate maps. Time limits were enforced. Exit frisking caught contamination before it spread. The approach prevented additional casualties among responders. The Atomic Energy Commission's first public posture emphasized containment of radiological risk. Internal memos debated design adequacy and procedural gaps, but those discussions remained within the agency and contractor circles. The divergence between public summary and internal technical detail would shape the historical record for decades. September to October 1962. Washington and Idaho. A typed Atomic Energy Commission press announcement, number E326, lands on a newsroom desk. The date stamp reads 24th September 1962. Public releases summarized recovery operations and safety posture. Internal and technical documents, IDO 19311, IDO 19313, addressed rod worth, inches withdrawn, and reactor kinetics. The formal report, IDO 19302, dated 31st October 1962, explicitly states it does not attempt to determine the cause. Document IDO 19313, titled Additional Analysis of the SL-1 Excursion, formalized the transient interpretation. It used measured debris conditions, position indicators, and kinetics models to reconstruct the event. The analysis is cited in the Department of Energy Freedom of Information Act reading room. Press announcement E326, with attachments from the Board of Investigation, is held by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and available through FOIA requests. The University of North Texas Digital Library hosts full PDF scans of related administrative materials. The gap between public summary and technical findings seeded decades of debate. What did the government know? When did they know it? The administrative report emphasized that it was a summary of activities following the incident, not a causal investigation. The technical series, however, quantified the mechanism: rapid central rod withdrawal, prompt supercriticality, mechanical violence. The number 20 inches appears in technical memoranda, but not prominently in public-facing documents. That metric, buried in appendices, becomes the decisive input for policy change. It drives new interlock designs, administrative controls, and training doctrine across comparable reactor programs in the United States. 1962. Analytical briefings, Atomic Energy Commission and contractor offices. A slide shows reactivity plotted against rod position. One line is highlighted at 20 inches, marked in red. Operators were trained for inch-by-inch control. Small, deliberate movements with verification at each step. Reconstruction showed something different. A single rapid lift sufficient for prompt criticality with outer control rod still inserted. Rodworth curves quantify how much reactivity each inch of withdrawal adds. For the SL-1 central rod, the curve was steep. A 20-inch lift alone could take the core from deeply subcritical to prompt critical. Time to feedback, the interval during which void formation or temperature rise could insert negative reactivity, was longer than the insertion event. The result? A power burst, energy release estimated in the range of few times 10 to the 18th fissions. Metallographic evidence and shield plug ejection patterns matched the predicted mechanical outcomes. NASA's 2007 safety message summarizes: rapid retraction of the central control rod to 20 inches resulted in a condition known as a prompt criticality. That synthesis draws on decades of public and technical documentation, including the Atomic Energy Commission's IDO series. The number underwrites a doctrinal shift. New designs incorporate hard limits on single rod worth. Interlocks prevent rapid insertion. Administrative controls require independent verification before startup. Training emphasizes the SL-1 case as a demonstration of what happens when reactivity insertion outpaces feedback. With the mechanism established, the program faced a new question: what to do with a contaminated building, disrupted core, and activated components? The answer? Containment by demolition, burial on site, long-term monitoring. 21st May 1961 to June 1962. SL-1 grounds, National Reactor Testing Station. Dozers and cranes stage under health physics supervision. Surveyors stake burial trench perimeters. Some voices advocated full deconstruction and off-site. Disposal, shipping every contaminated component to processing facilities or permanent repositories. The decision: cut up the building, bury most debris on site under engineered covers, ship fuel and select components to the hot shop and processing streams. Shielded cutting equipment sectioned the structure. Package counts tracked every load. Soil removal extended to defined depths. Periodic cap inspection protocols were drafted. Perimeter sampling continued throughout the operation and beyond. Document IDO 19311 states, moving the pressure vessel and core to the hot shop, dissecting and analyzing the reactor and its components, cutting up and burying the reactor building. A Department of Energy summary notes cleanup activities from 23 May 1961 to 22 June 1962. Rapid on-site entombment limited transport risk. Contaminated materials did not travel public highways. Resources freed by the containment decision supported detailed analysis in the hot shop. Long-term monitoring obligations, however, were locked to the National Reactor Testing Station burial ground. Engineered caps required inspection. Groundwater sampling, surface surveys, and integrity checks became routine. Document IDO 19310, a meteorological annex, shows why off-site impacts remained low, wind patterns, particle deposition models, and measured contamination aligned. The data also explained why cap integrity would matter for decades. Any breach could mobilize residual activity. The burial ground remains today marked on site maps, subject to periodic environmental reviews. The choice reflected 1960s capabilities and priorities: contain, monitor, document. 1962 to 1963 and continuing, Atomic Energy Commission and Program Offices. A training binder sits open. A new page, recently inserted, carries the title Single Rod Worth Limits, Mandatory. Pre-1961 practice tolerated single rod dominance in some test reactor systems. The rationale: operational simplicity, faster startups, reduced procedural overhead. Post-SL-1, measures changed. Hardware interlocks were imposed. Administrative controls were codified. Procedural safeguards barred rapid single-rod insertions capable of prompt criticality. Interlock logic tied to rod position and withdrawal rates. Startup checklists expanded. Independent verification became mandatory before critical operations. Emergency entry dose management protocols were codified, drawing directly from SL-1 responder experience. NASA's 2007 safety message lists contributing factors: inadequate design and materials testing, insufficient procedural controls, single rod worth concentration. The message distills lessons learned for modern programs, referencing the Atomic Energy Commission's technical documentation. The 20 inches finding translated directly into design and procedural changes beyond the Army's package power program. Test reactors, research facilities, and training programs incorporated the lesson. Single rod worth became a design limit, not merely a procedural caution. If a rod could insert enough reactivity for prompt criticality, interlocks prevented its rapid motion. If administrative limits were the only safeguard, independent verification and logged steps became mandatory. The operational phase ended with burial and cap installation in mid-1962. The historical question persisted: how was the event framed publicly versus what the technical record shows? That divergence between administrative summaries that avoided causal determination and technical appendices that quantified mechanism shaped decades of historiography. Researchers, policy analysts, and educators returned repeatedly to the documents, reconstructing not only what happened but what was known, when, and how it was communicated. 1961 to 1962, Washington and Idaho. Later document releases through Freedom of Information Act requests. A table holds 2 stacks of paper. On one side, press packets including Atomic Energy Commission announcement E326 and the administrative report IDO 19302. On the other, technical binders IDO 19311, IDO 19313, IDO 19310, hot shop photo logs, kinetics notes. The public saw a careful administrative report. Document IDO 19302, dated 31st October 1962, opens with a clear statement: it does not attempt to determine the cause. The report summarizes activities following the incident: entry controls, recovery operations, dose management, burial procedures. It addresses what was done, not why the excursion occurred. The technical trail tells a different story. Document IDO 19311, the final recovery report dated July 1962, chronicles vessel removal, hot shop dissection, debris analysis. Document IDO 19313, additional analysis of the SL-1 excursion, formalizes the kinetics interpretation. Prompt critical initiated by rapid central rod withdrawal. Mechanical disassembly consequent to the power burst. Document IDO 19310 addresses meteorology, particle dispersion and environmental monitoring. Press announcement E326, dated 24th September 1962, with attachments from the Board of Investigation, is held by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and accessible through FOIA. The University of North Texas Digital Library hosts full scans. The divergence shaped historiography. Withheld details became a narrative in popular accounts. Technical mechanisms remained in specialist reports, read by engineers and regulators, but less often by the public. The gap was not concealment in the conspiratorial sense, it was division of labor. Administrative reports addressed operations and safety posture. Technical annexes addressed physics and engineering. Both are part of the record. Both are necessary to understand what happened. 1962 to present. SL-1 Burial Ground, Idaho. National Engineering and Environmental Laboratory. A CAP inspection checklist rests on a clipboard. A survey meter sits on a truck dashboard, ready for the next scheduled round. Recovery window, 23rd May 1961 to 22nd June 1962. Vessel to hot shop. Reactor building cut up and buried on site. CAP installed. Periodic inspections instituted. Meteorology-driven monitoring notes archived in documents IDO 19310 and IDO 19311. Human cost. 3 fatalities at the scene. Richard C. Legg, John A. Burns, Richard L. McKinley. Responder doses were tracked and controlled under emergency doctrine. No additional casualties occurred among recovery personnel. The dose management protocols developed during SL-1 response informed subsequent emergency planning guidance across the Atomic Energy Commission complex and later the Department of Energy. Program impact extended beyond the immediate incident. Interlocks, Rodworth limits and training changes propagated across reactor programs. SL-1 remains the only United States reactor accident with immediate fatalities. The event is cited in safety training, regulatory guidance, and engineering curricula. NASA's 2007 safety message offers a technical summary. Starting from a fully shut down condition, rapid retraction of the central control rod to 20 inches resulted in a condition known as a prompt criticality. That statement synthesizes the consensus mechanism developed from Atomic Energy Commission and Idaho operations technical documentation. The burial ground remains today. Site maps mark its location. Environmental reviews continue at intervals. CAP integrity is inspected. Groundwater is sampled. Surface surveys confirm containment. The physical site is a monument to both the event and the response, a reminder that outcomes flowed from design choices, procedural gaps, and the rapid actions of responders who worked under extreme conditions to contain radiological hazard. Memory is preserved not in rhetoric, but in the archive, documents, photographs, dose logs, and the enduring commitment to monitor what was buried.